Alright, new game, new day, new adventure. Got my cup of tea, got my comfy slippers, got my... I don't think I'll need those today. Let's begin this fucker.
I am thou. Thou art I. Thou hast acquired a new game. It shall become the wings of addiction that breaketh thy ability to leave thy house. With the birth of Persona 5, I have obtained the game of compulsion that shall lead to over 100 hours of no sunlight and social life.
And I do not regret a single one of those hours. Well, maybe the one where I encountered the demon that took the form of a giant erect green penis riding a chariot. No, don't show it! But apart from that, I'm calling it. This is gonna win Game of the Year for a lot of people. Myself included.
Yeah, I think what we have here is a game that I can apply my highest honour to. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I have the attention span of a mentally challenged goldfish. As a result, even the most critically acclaimed games can lose me if their campaigns go on too long. Skyrim, Fallout, Witcher, Borderlands, Far Cry, all of which I eventually gave up on playing and never got around to finishing.
Now, the reason why this is probably has more to do with how I'm not a kid anymore.
Back then, I'd go comatose in front of a screen because I didn't have anything else better to do. But now there's a lot of association of guilt.
I could spend 300 hours of my adult life leveling up my dark elf character in the land of Tamriel, or I could get some work done. Work it is. Now this is a healthy mindset to have, and as a result, in my post-college life, no video game series has convinced me to spend over 100 hours playing their game. Except one.
Now, know that I'm not all that familiar with the Persona series, as prior to today's game, I had only ever played Persona 4, of which I played just a few years ago and would highly recommend, by the way. But we're here to talk about the newest entry in the series, Persona 5, and I'm going to review this game with potential new fans in mind, because if you ever fancy getting into this series, then this is a hell of an entry point.
So, what's the game even about, you may ask?
Number 1. Don't be fooled, high school is not this fun. So Persona 5 stars a young male high school student you yourself name.
Sorry ladies, you're a dude today. I actually got a question for my female subscribers. All two of you. If a game doesn't let you play as a girl, what do you name the given male character? I mean, you can hardly use your own name, can you? Hey, how's it going? I'm Ryuji. What's your name? Natalie. Alright.
Anywho, turns out you were arrested as you've been put on probation for a crime you didn't commit. Your sentence? You gotta live in Tokyo for a year and go to high school there.
Oh, the horror.
And as you begin your normal high school life, you stumble into another world where the distorted desires of evil dudes materialize, where you and your new school friends can summon powerful personas to defeat demons lurking within, and those change a person's heart. So you and your group decide to become the Phantom Thieves to rehabilitate as many evildoers as possible, all while uncovering a mystery pertaining to a series of mysterious mental shutdowns that plague the city of Tokyo. Now when there's typical Japanese perviness, fusing demons by beheading them, the option to date 9 girls at the same time, a teacher that searches your personal call at home maid, and a talking cat that can transform into a car.
Just another typical day in Japan. Yatta!
Now when I was talking about how this game managed to keep my interest for its 100 plus hour campaign,
a large reason for that is due to the story, and more importantly, the characters.
the cast ensemble here is amazing. Like, I know I said I love the Final Fantasy 15 characters, but those guys have got nothing on the Persona 5 cast. Everyone has their own lovable quirks and personalities, and as your player avatar builds his relationships with them, you too become more attached.
Now, at first glance, I was actually a little unsure of this cast, as a lot of these guys actually fall into very familiar archetypes already established in Persona 4.
You've got the silent protagonist, the best friend who's kind of an idiot, the aspiring model, the animal companion, hell, there's even a young detective prodigy. But those similarities are more mere outlines. The Persona 5 cast all shine through in their own unique ways. They're just all super likeable and a lot of fun to be around. That's not to say they're impeccably written though. For For example, there are some oddly translated lines here and there.
They've taken up intercept positions. It means they're holding nothing back and are serious to kill us.
They're serious to kill us?
A lot of other dialogue choices and character traits are odd too, like how a cat has the hots for a human female.
She's a cougar.
But it's fine. The dialogue can get cheesy at times, but I find it downright impossible not to fall in love with this group. They're just a ton of fun. And through a combination of their own personal hardships and their unrelenting optimism, it makes them easy to empathize and care about them.
Now the actual plot of Persona 5 fares well too. In fact, what I initially liked here was how it told its story.
You see, the game begins with a flash forward where a mission goes wrong and you're subsequently arrested. What precedes is an interrogation as a prosecutor asks you how the Phantom Thieves came to be, and as you tell your tale, you play said events. This storytelling angle works so well here, and it keeps you engaged because you want to know how you eventually wind up in this situation. Now, if I were to nitpick the story, I guess I would say that certain twists and turns you could see coming a mile away. There are certain plot threads which I felt were included for the sole reason of extending the game's runtime.
Like the bit where Morgana and Haru do their own thing. I felt that whole bit felt a bit unnecessary.
Dialogue choices are also present in this game, but they're honestly just there for show. Often you'll be given 3 or so options and they all essentially mean the same thing. For example, you're sometimes asked if something is a good idea or not, and the game doesn't even let you say no. Oh, and I also felt that the story went a bit OTT towards the very end, but seriously, I'm clutching at straws here. Oh, and despite the previously mentioned odd translations, I actually thought the localization team did a good job. All the English voice actors are well cast, and even if you prefer the Japanese audio track, you can actually download it from the PSN for free. Cracking!
I mean, if I ever play Persona 5 again, I'd probably use the Japanese audio. If nothing else but fix the instances where characters are talking about learning English when they're already speaking it.
Even if we study English, it's not like I'm gonna use it in the future.
Yeah, English is useless. Like, when are you ever gonna hear me speak it? I'm not even gonna bother.
Number 2. I wonder if you know how they live in Tokyo. So we'll get to the actual RPG-ing in a bit, but let's talk about what you do in the real world. And your goal here is primarily one thing: hang out with your friends, aka your confidants. Now there's also your social stats to raise as well, those being guts, kindness, knowledge, charm and proficiency. Though those are all essentially roadblocks. For example, you can't max out your confidant rating with Yusuke until your proficiency is high enough. So yeah, your goal is to hang out with your friends, gain levels with them, and in turn you'll acquire perks and abilities that will help you out when dungeon crawling. For example, hanging out with Kawakami will give you more free time to raise your stats, and hanging out with Awai will give you weapon discounts. Also, any personas you've used under each confidant's respective arcana will give you an experience boost. Hang out with Mishima, for example, and all moon personas you've used from then on will be stronger.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, a little disappointed that the character called Mishima isn't represented by the Devil Arcana. Come on, guys!
Now your goal in these conversations boils down to giving the correct text response. Do so and you'll rank up faster with them. Which, by the way, is important as time in this game is limited.
Oh, and that's not a bad thing here.
Remember in my Lightning Returns review when I was complaining about how annoying that countdown timer was? Well, Persona 5 is how you do that concept right. Your time is limited in this game, yes, but it's not real time. Time instead is taken up from activities, not from you just walking around. So you can thankfully sit back, relax and explore Tokyo at your own leisure. That being said, you still inevitably want to save all the time you can. You want to make sure you rank up your confidence as quickly as possible, and you also want to make sure you raise your stats at the right time so you can get as many points as you can.
As a result, you may be tempted to use a walkthrough in this game.
Because if you don't, you'll inevitably miss a few things. Like the TV might have a quiz show on where you can get a free knowledge point, or working a part-time job might unlock a secret side mission.
And this all brought out my worst habits as a gamer.
Okay, 4th of August, I can hang out with Ryuji and Anne. I can also go to Jahaya, get the luck reading and get +2 to my charm at the fruit juice stand. I can also get +1 knowledge from watching the TV at LeBlanc, and I also need to pick up another bionutrient for the houseplant to get +3 for my kindness, and
this is what I ended up playing the game like a checklist.
always looking at GameFAQs so I could discover what the right responses were and where I could get all the social stat points at any given day.
Let me just advise you all not to play the game like this.
As I learned that it is pretty impossible to do everything the game offers in one playthrough. That is what New Game Plus is for, as all your social stats and equipment will carry over.
I personally will be playing New Game Plus because I got other videos I need to be working on, but it's there and it'll give you all the time to 100% the game if you so desire. Oh, and if you're ever stuck on what you should do on a given day, you can make use of a neat little feature I quite liked called the Thieves Guild.
By hitting the touchpad on your controller, you can see what other players of Persona 5 did on the same day you're on, along with everyone's average level at that time. It was pretty cool to see how your player habits compare to everyone else's. You can also access this feature when you're asked a question in class, as it essentially becomes Ask the Audience from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Just know though that the most popular answer is always the correct one. So yeah, it essentially becomes a cheat sheet here.
Not that I'm against this, as I'd probably just Google the answers anyway.
But with you being asked these questions, I ended up legitimately learning a few things in my playthrough. Like, did you know SOS doesn't actually stand for Save Our Souls? SOS is actually just the simplest thing you can send in Morse code. How about that shit? Persona 5, best educational game ever made.
Now, in hanging out with your confidants, you'll enjoy their company and their own little personal stories, but you'll begin to notice that all you do with them is talk, which is fine, but for a 100+ hour game, I think more variety could have been offered here.
For example, one of your confidants is a kid called Shinya, who teaches you gun skills at an arcade. But notice how only your avatar is playing here. Like, why can't there be a quick on-the-rails shooter minigame? And if you get a high enough score, it would increase your confidant rating and maybe net you a free item. Same goes with other confidants, like maybe you could invite Ann to karaoke and there'd be a Yakuza-style rhythm minigame. Or maybe you could invite Ryuji to play some darts and a game of pool.
Yeah, mini-games. I feel this would have been a great addition to the part social simulator game that is Persona 5.
I think it would have offered some nice respite from all this talking. Now, there are actually 3 minigames present in Persona 5. One being a fishing minigame, there's the batting cages, and there's a crossword puzzle you can solve.
But that's it, and you can only partake in these activities alone.
So yeah, this isn't a big deal, but it does seem a little odd that in a game where you build relationships with people, there's nothing to do with them except talk. A lot.
That being said, you and 8 of your friends like to don masquerade outfits every now and then and head into people's minds to fight demons. Just another day at the office, so let's now finally explore that side of the game.
Number 3. Looking cool, Joker.
Okay, first off, a criticism. And it's an odd criticism to give a turn-based RPG, but the very first thing I noticed when playing Persona 5 is just how stiff the movement feels.
You see, the analog stick has got a large dead zone, so it makes walking around feel very odd at first. Now, given this is a 100+ hour game, you do get used to it, but
Seriously, Atlus can make the controls any better than this?
now, there's 2 types of levels in this game. Firstly, you have palaces, which serve as the stages for all story missions. And what initially pleased me is how, unlike Persona 4, their layouts are not randomly generated, they've actually been designed this time. And whilst I wouldn't call them the most interesting of RPG levels, there are often clever things done with them. There's a museum level where you can hop in and out of paintings, for example.
Though I would have liked it had they pushed that kind of clever level design a bit more.
I mean, these are people's cognitions we're exploring here. The possibilities for level designs are endless. And you got some cool ones, like the first palace is a medieval style castle.
And, well, you gotta go up from there. So what could the third palace be, for example?
A nice temple or haunted house, a theme park.
Nah, I got something far more exciting. How about a sterile, monotonous, corridor-rich bank?
Whoa.
I mean, seriously, Atlus, you could have given this level any number of elaborate and exciting locales, and you settled for a bank? What's the setting of the fourth palace gonna be? The fucking IRS building? Look out, Joker! There's a shadow lurking in that pile of 1040 income tax returns!
Regardless, level design is okay.
but the randomized dungeons from previous Persona games actually do make a comeback in the form of Mementos.
The Freshmaker.
So you got palaces, which are the home of distorted desires for individuals, and Mementos is the home of distorted desires for the public. Mementos serves as a place you undertake side missions.
Or when you get around on a cow that's also a cat. That's fun in and of itself. I mean, Morgana is a literal... yeah.
Not much to say here, except that it's nice that randomized level layouts aren't this game's major focus. But it's still nice it's here, because if you ever tire of the real world stuff, just head right into Mementos to get your demon ass-kicking fix.
Now, the battle system isn't the most complex you'll see in a modern day RPG, but it's still effective.
It's turn-based, which is actually kinda refreshing to see in a home console RPG these days. Much like Pokemon, you make use of your monster's abilities to hit your opponent's weaknesses. This is the crutch of the battle system. The goal is always to find out your opponent's weakness, hit them with said weakness to stun them, and then you go in with an all-out attack for heavy damage. There's also stat boosts you can give your team, stat reductions to give your enemies, ailments to take into consideration, and other abilities like being able to reflect magic back at your enemies. There's also a cool system where you can baton pass to a teammate of yours after you've hit an opponent's weakness. This gets you an extra turn in battle and also ups your stats temporarily. It's a cool system, and whilst it does make a lot of battles pretty one-sided if you know what you're doing, it's still fun to pull off.
Now, the difficulty here comes in two forms.
Firstly, there's your standard kind of difficulty reserved for tougher enemies and boss fights, where you gotta manage your health, pick your attacks wisely, etc. Typical RPG stuff. The second kind of difficulty, however, regards SP conservation, SP being the magic point equivalent in this game, because when you enter a palace, there's no way to recover your SP without leaving the palace, and when you do that, you'll lose time and you'll have to come back the next day. As a result, you gotta be careful when and where you use your Persona's abilities. SP recovery items are hard to come by, so this makes battles uniquely challenging. Well, I could hit this enemy with Bufu, but I gotta conserve SP in case I need to recover my health. Tough call.
This makes getting through the first palace of the game pretty challenging, actually. But notice how I just said the first palace, because this is one of those games that, for me at least, got easier as I went along.
Because once you've reached a confidant rating of 7 with Dr. Tai Takemi here, you can buy SP adhesives which recover your SP every turn in battle. Once you save up enough yen to buy these items, the game gets a lot easier. All of a sudden you can go crazy with your Persona abilities without having to worry about conserving SP. And if you ever run low, all you gotta do is find a weak enemy and keep guarding till you get it all back. Now, this doesn't break the game or anything, but it makes certain parts of the game a breeze. Often you'll be making your way through a palace, you'll encounter an enemy, you'll hit their weakness on the first turn, and subsequently take them out. In one turn. Rinse and repeat for the next enemy. As a result, palace exploration can get a little repetitive at times, especially when you're exploring the longer palaces, and yes, some indeed feel like they go on for a while. Now, it's better than Persona 4 because levels are no longer randomly generated, there's actual level design here, and that keeps palace exploration fun. But it's hard to be all that engaged with the battle system when so many battles end in just one turn. Hell, later in the game when a hacker character joins your team, there'll be a chance that she'll make you win a battle without you having to do a damn thing, and you'll actually be thankful for it.
However, before anyone bites my head off, this isn't a deal breaker. Why? Well, battles are pretty fast paced.
Starting battles only takes a few seconds, and battle animations are flashy but swift. As a result, the easy battles in Persona 5 don't weigh down on you as much as they do in the Pokemon games, for example. They're over pretty quickly, so they don't ruin the flow of the game.
You know when you play certain RPGs and you just rush through weak enemies without a second thought, but somehow you're still having fun? Yeah, Persona 5 is like that sometimes.
I like to call this phenomenon binge killing. You're not paying all that much attention to strategy, you just have fun leveling up and watching so many health bars go down to 0.
Though maybe the reason why I found so many battles easy might have something to do with how I got ambushes down.
Yeah, there's a light stealth element to this game. You can hide behind cover, and if you successfully attack an enemy from behind, you'll get the upper hand in battle. If you fuck up, battles get considerably harder. And I do like this feature, it keeps you on your toes outside of battle too, and it adds a new layer to what would otherwise be basic dungeon crawling. And battles still can get challenging. Some bosses can one-hit KO you if you're not high leveled enough, and if you come across an enemy that doesn't have a weakness to take advantage of, they can wreck your shit if you're not careful.
You see, you as a player get an additional turn in battle if you hit an enemy's weakness, but the same applies vice versa.
If someone on your team gets hit with their weakness, your enemies will get a second turn and they can often take a huge chunk of health from you. But some of the time, this can actually feel a bit cheap. Not because enemies are tough, but because of the game over condition. Now, how do you get a game over in Persona 5?
Well, all your party members die. Surely that's it, right? No.
In fact, it all relies on you. If the player character dies, you gotta reload your last save. Yeah, everyone else can be alive and kicking, but the moment Joker bites the dust...
Game over, man! It's game over!
I don't know why this is, and it did lead to a few cheap game overs in my playthrough. Now, it's not a big deal, but I definitely wasn't a fan of this design choice.
But back to the demons you face, and let it be known that they aren't just enemies to beat, as you can also speak with them.
Once you've knocked them down, you can get them to fork over cash, hand over an item, or more importantly, recruit them to your cause by absorbing them into your mask.
Hey, someone tell Ash you don't need to carry around those Pokeballs all day. All he needs to do is dress like an extra and eyes wide shut and he's golden.
Anywho, these demons don't automatically join you. You gotta convince them by responding appropriately to what they say.
However, it's pretty trial and error.
There is a method to use here though. Each demon is given one of 4 personality types: upbeat, timid, irritable, or gloomy. And each one of these types of demon likes certain kinds of answers, but dislike others. For example, gloomy demons like vague answers, but dislike serious or joking ones. But it's often really difficult to figure out what category each response falls under. Let's take this dude for example. Sorry, but I want you to go home now. I'm already feeling so tired and weary. Ho. And the responses are, fine, no, and you go home. Okay, so this dude is a gloomy demon, and they like vague answers. Fine, no, you go home. Which one's vague? They all sound like pretty definite answers. No. Oh, okay, yeah, apparently a straight up no is considered vague. What? Yeah, it's more pure luck. I mean, sometimes it works. There's more of a notable distinction between serious and joking answers, for example. But I'd have much rather had a different means of negotiation. Like maybe the demon challenges you to a quick minigame, or maybe they could ask you to solve a riddle, or maybe they could ask a general knowledge question. That's gotta be a better idea than something that relies on luck of the draw. Thankfully, you don't have to keep doing this if you want to recruit a persona you already have, but yeah, this system needs a serious overhaul for future Persona games.
So once you've recruited a few personas, you'll want to head over to the Velvet Room.
Here you can manage personas, make them stronger, turn them into items, and more importantly, fuse them. Not exactly much to say about this except for what annoys me about it. Firstly, when fusing personas, you'll notice how the 5 stats of strength, magic, endurance, agility, and luck all randomly turn yellow. Well, if a stat lights up, it'll mean that particular stat will rise once the persona has been fused. But the more stats that are lit, the less the stat will rise. So for example, you'll want the strength stat raised and the magic stat grayed out if the resulting persona lacks magic skills and primarily uses physical ones. But unfortunately, you can't choose what stats you want raised. Well, okay, you can, but in order to do this, you have to go in and out of menus as the stat spread resets. All while Caroline and Justine here repeat dialogue over and over again, so you're left no choice but to temporarily mute your TV so you don't go insane.
But not terrible. But not... You okay with this? Not terrible. But not terrible. But not... You okay with this? You okay with this?
This is so dumb. Why can't I just deselect the stats I'm not interested in?
Regardless though, fusing and collecting personas is still pretty amusing.
It's fun to see all the different fusion results you can get, and when you unlock the stronger skills, RPG fans might like to try out some die-hard fusion recipes where you can apparently create indestructible personas.
Whoa.
Number 4. Menu porn.
Now, you know when they say great graphics don't make a great game? Well, in situations like these, they certainly do help.
Now, okay, technically the game doesn't look all that impressive. In fact, this game could have gotten a PS3 release and... oh, well, there you go. Tokyo isn't as expansive as I would have liked, character models are pretty basic, and whilst the areas you explore have a nice bustly feeling to them, they're seriously lacking in detail. Case in point, the scary as fuck pedestrians.
Now, this would be where I would say something like, avoid eye contact with them at all costs. But I'm not going to say that. Why? Because I don't have eyes. Kill it with fire!
But what the game lacks in polygons, it more than makes up for in style. This game just feels alive. Firstly, the menus and the UI. Now, it's such a weird thing to comment on in a video game, but the way the menus are animated is just pure eye candy. Look at the way Takemi swivels on her chair as you go to buy medicine. Look at the screen transitions. Look at the way the battle summary shows its info. Look at the all-out attack animation. It's just a feast for the eyes.
And the soundtrack, I mean, this is the best video game OST in recent memory.
I know this jazz sound isn't going to be to everyone's tastes, but it works so well here. It's relaxing and comforting when you're in the real world, and it gets you pumped when you're fighting demons. But despite there being 110 songs on this soundtrack, some songs you hear more than you desire.
I mean, the victory theme in this game never changes. Yeah, after every single battle won in this game, you'll hear the following theme and it will burn a hole in your brain. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah. Speaking of sound bites you'll hear over and over again.
I will also definitely recommend Atlus that they record some more catchphrases for their characters in the future, because you hear a lot of these. A lot.
Looking cool, Joker. Bonafide, monafide. It's almost scary how good I am. Easier than cleaning my brushes. Oh, you can do this. You're so gorgeous, Panther. I'll reveal your true form. Nice work, team. For real?
Yeah, this wouldn't be an issue in most games, but for one that you spend over 100 hours with, it gets a tad grating, especially if you choose to grind.
But regarding this game's presentation as a whole, I have a lot of respect for it.
Developers rarely bother with filling their games with such visual and audible flair. I mean, honestly, have you ever heard of another example of a meme being born from a style of menu? That's just crazy when you think about it.
So I think that about covers everything. Let's conclude, shall we?
Persona 5 is an amazing game. Not a perfect game by any means, but it's head and shoulders above other JRPGs of the current generation. The cast is strong, the story is intriguing, the soundtrack is memorable, the combat is delightfully flashy.
Persona 5 easily is a 9 out of 10.
What keeps it from being a straight up 10 is mostly due to how it's not all that revolutionary. Considering the huge 10-year gap between Persona 4 and 5, I was hoping the game would have a few more tricks up its sleeve. The combat is fun, but it could be a bit more engrossing. The palaces are great, but some can be a slug to get through. There could be more to do with your friends other than talking. It'd be cool if your dialogue choices had more of an impact, and I think the Persona Fusion and recruitment system could do with an overhaul. But these are all pretty minor qualms.
If you have even a passing interest in RPGs, and as long as you're willing to fork over 100 hours of your life playing a single video game, definitely give Persona 5 a look. I'll see you guys next time.